The classroom was huge. Jake Morrison sat in the back row, trying to make himself as small as possible. Around him, hundreds of alien students filled the seats. They had been staring at him for weeks now. Some would point and whisper when they thought he wasn't looking. Others would quickly look away when he caught them staring. Jake was the only human in the Galactic Academy. He was part of a new exchange program between Earth and the galaxy's main education system. The other students came from dozens of different worlds. There were tall, thin creatures with 4 arms. There were small, round beings that glowed softly in the dark. Some looked like walking crystals. Others seemed to be made of living metal, but Jake was different. He was a human. He came from what everyone called a death world. Professor Zithara walked into the classroom. She was a Valtheri, which meant she had long, snake-like arms that moved like tentacles. Her skin was purple, and she had 3 eyes on her head. She had been teaching xenobiology for over 50 years. Today was going to be special. "Students," she said, her voice carrying across the large room, "today we will study the most dangerous species in all of known space." The alien students sat up straighter in their seats. Many of them looked excited. A few looked scared. "We are going to learn about humans," Professor Zithara continued. "They come from a planet called Earth. We have classified Earth as a Class 12 death world." Jake felt his face get hot. He sank lower in his seat. "A Class 12 death world is the most dangerous type of planet we know about," the professor explained. "Most species in the galaxy would die within minutes if they tried to visit Earth. The air is toxic to many races. The weather is violent and unpredictable. The gravity is crushing. And the native life forms are absolutely terrifying." Professor Zithara pressed a button on her desk. The lights in the room dimmed, and a huge holographic display appeared in the air above the students. It showed pictures of Earth. The first image was of a massive storm. Lightning flashed across dark clouds. Rain poured down in sheets. The wind was so strong it was bending trees almost to the ground. Several students gasped. A small, fuzzy creature that looked like a walking cotton ball fainted and fell out of its chair. "This is what humans call a thunderstorm," Professor Zithara said. "They happen regularly on Earth. The electrical discharge from just one lightning bolt contains enough energy to power a small city for a month." The next image showed a volcano erupting. Lava shot high into the air. Rivers of melted rock flowed down the mountainsides. The sky was full of ash and smoke. "Humans live near these mountains of fire," the professor said. "They call them volcanoes. The planet's surface is constantly changing because of them. Yet humans have built cities right next to them." More images flashed by. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Tornadoes that could destroy entire towns. Hurricanes that covered areas larger than most planets. Ice storms that froze everything solid. "But the weather is not the worst part," Professor Zithara said. "The worst part is the creatures that live there." The display changed to show Earth's animals. The alien students had never seen anything like them. The first creature was a great white shark. It was huge, with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Its black eyes looked cold and hungry. The hologram showed it attacking a seal, its massive jaws snapping shut with incredible force. Half the class screamed. Several more students fainted. "This is called a great white shark," Professor Zithara explained. "It can grow to be over 20 feet long. It can smell a single drop of blood from miles away. Its bite force is over 4,000 pounds per square inch. It has been hunting in Earth's oceans for over 400 million years." The next image was even worse. A massive crocodile lay on a riverbank. Its body was covered in thick, armor-like skin. Its mouth was full of teeth that looked like knives. "The saltwater crocodile," the professor said. It can grow to be over 20 feet long and weigh more than a ton. It has the strongest bite force of any animal on Earth. Evolution has not changed. These creatures in millions of years because they were already perfect killing machines. A student near the front of the class raised a trembling tentacle. It was a Krillian, a species that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a bird. "Professor," the student said in a shaky voice, "how do humans survive on such a terrible world?" "That is an excellent question," Professor Zithara replied. "Humans are incredibly tough. They have to be. Their bodies are designed for survival in extreme conditions. Their bones are dense and strong. Their muscles are powerful. Their skin can heal from wounds that would kill most other species." She pressed another button, and the display showed a human skeleton next to skeletons from other species. The human skeleton looked thick and heavy compared to the others. "But physical strength is not the only reason humans survive," the professor continued. "They are also incredibly intelligent. They have learned to use tools and work together. They have built shelters to protect themselves from the weather. They have developed weapons to fight off predators." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't feel particularly tough or smart. He was just a regular guy from Ohio who liked video games and pizza. "However," Professor Zithara said, "there is still much we don't understand about humans. How do they maintain their sanity while living in constant danger? How do they find the courage to face such deadly creatures every day?" Before anyone could answer, Jake's communicator started beeping. He had forgotten to turn it off. The sound was loud in the quiet classroom. Everyone turned to look at him. Jake quickly grabbed his device to turn it off, but he accidentally hit the answer button. Instead, suddenly, a holographic image appeared above his desk. It was his sister Lisa, calling from Earth. "Hey, Jake," Lisa said with a big smile. "Guess what happened today?" Jake's face went pale. "Lisa, not now. I'm in class." "Oh, this will just take a second," Lisa said. "I was out diving today, and look what followed me home." Lisa turned her communicator around to show what was behind her. The entire classroom erupted in screams of terror. There, swimming in what looked like a large pool, was a massive great white shark. It was the same type of creature that Professor Zithara had just shown them. But this one was right there, just a few feet away from Jake's sister. "Lisa," Jake whispered urgently, "you're scaring my classmates." "Oh, sorry," Lisa said, turning the communicator back to face her. "Everyone, meet Bruce. He's such a sweet boy." The aliens watched in horror as Lisa reached out toward the shark. They were sure they were about to witness a human being eaten alive, but that's not what happened. Instead, Lisa gently touched the shark's nose. The massive predator didn't attack. It didn't even seem angry. If anything, it looked like it was enjoying the attention. It moved closer to Lisa's hand, almost like it wanted to be petted. "Bruce here got caught in some old fishing nets," Lisa explained. "He had some bad cuts on his fins. I've been taking care of him for a few weeks now. He's almost ready to go back to the ocean." The Krillian student who had asked the question earlier made a small whimpering sound and fell out of his chair. He had fainted completely. "Bruce is actually really gentle," Lisa continued. "He likes it when I scratch behind his fins. Don't you?" "Boy." The shark made a low rumbling sound that almost sounded like purring. It pressed its massive head against Lisa's hand. "Humans call these creatures pets," Professor Zithara said weakly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They form emotional bonds with the apex predators of their world." Jake looked around the classroom. Half the students had fainted. The others were staring at him like he was some kind of monster. A few were quietly crying. "I should probably go," Jake said, standing up from his seat. "Wait," Professor Zithara called out. "This changes everything. We need to understand how this is possible." Well, Jake said, Bruce isn't really a pet. He's more like a patient. My sister is a marine biologist. She helps injured sea animals. But she's touching it, a student squeaked. With her bare hands, Jake shrugged. Sharks aren't really that dangerous if you know what you're doing. They're actually pretty shy. Most shark attacks happen because the shark thinks a person is a seal or something. The classroom had gone completely silent. Even the students who had fainted were starting to wake up, though they immediately wished they hadn't. I think we need to learn more about this, Professor, Sithara said. Much more, Jake nodded. I can ask my friends and family to help. There's a lot about Earth that might surprise you. As Jake left the classroom, he could hear the alien students whispering behind him. Some were afraid. Others were curious. All of them were completely confused. How could a species that lived with such deadly creatures be so calm about it? How could they not only survive, but actually seem to enjoy living with these monsters? Jake smiled to himself. If they thought Bruce was scary, wait until they met his grandmother's cat. The news about Jake's sister and the shark had spread throughout the Galactic Academy like wildfire. Students from other classes were sneaking into Professor Zithara's xenobiology lectures just to get a look at the human. Some brought recording devices. Others took pictures from far away. Professor Zithara had spent the entire night reading reports about Earth and its creatures. The more she read, the more confused she became. Nothing made sense. How could a species survive on such a dangerous planet? How could they live alongside creatures that should have eaten them long ago? She decided to try a different approach. Instead of teaching about humans, she would let Jake teach the class about Earth. Today, Jake Morrison will give us a presentation about his home planet. Professor Zithara announced to the packed classroom. He has prepared some information about Earth's native species. Jake stood up nervously. He had never spoken in front of so many people before. The alien students were all staring at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Hi everyone, Jake said. I know you all think Earth is really dangerous, but I thought I'd show you some of the friendlier creatures first. He activated his presentation device. The first image that appeared was of a large German Shepherd dog. The dog was sitting in a yard, its tongue hanging out of its mouth. To humans, it looked happy and friendly. To the aliens, it looked like a terrifying monster. The dog's mouth was open, showing rows of sharp white teeth. Its eyes were dark and alert. Its body was muscular and powerful. Several students immediately got up and moved toward the exits. This is Max, Jake explained. He's my family's dog. Dogs are descendants of wolves, which are pack hunters. Max weighs about 90 pounds and has a bite force of 238 pounds per square inch. A thin, blue-skinned alien in the front row raised a shaking hand. You said this was one of the friendlier creatures? Oh, yeah, Jake said. Dogs are man's best friend. We've been living together for over 30,000 years. Max sleeps on my bed at night. He protects our house and plays with kids. The aliens looked at each other in confusion. How could humans sleep next to such a dangerous predator? Here's another friend, Jake said, changing to the next image. This picture showed a young woman sitting on a couch. In her lap was an orange tabby cat. The cat was purring, which made a low, rumbling sound. Its eyes were half closed, and it looked completely relaxed. But the aliens didn't see a peaceful scene. They saw a human holding what looked like a small but deadly predator. The cat's claws were visible, sharp as knives. Its eyes glowed in the light. Its teeth were pointed and white. This is my girlfriend Amy with her cat, Whiskers, Jake said. Cats are incredible hunters. They have night vision, retractable claws, and lightning-fast reflexes. They're so good at hunting that they've caused 63 species to go extinct just by existing. A student in the back row made a strangled sound. And you allow these creatures to live in your homes? Well, we don't really allow them, Jake said with a laugh. Cats pretty much do whatever they want. We just provide food, water, and medical care. In return, they give us companionship and emotional support. Though some people say that cats actually domesticated us, not the other way around. Professor Zithara was taking notes frantically. Her 3 eyes were wide with amazement. You're saying that these predators choose to live with humans? She asked. That's right, Jake said. They could leave any time they want, but they stay because they like being with us. Whiskers brings Amy dead mice as presents because that's how cats show love. The idea of a predator bringing gifts to a human was so strange that several students started making worried noises. What about the larger predators? Asked a brave student from the middle of the room. Surely you stay away from the truly dangerous ones? Jake grinned. Oh, you mean like sharks? Let me show you something my friend Ben sent me. The next image was a video. It showed a human male floating in open water, wearing diving gear. Around him, at least a dozen great white sharks were swimming calmly. The sharks were huge, some of them over 15 feet long. Their black eyes watched the human, but they didn't attack. The classroom erupted in panic. Students were screaming, fainting, and running for the doors. The Krillian student, who had fainted the day before, immediately passed out again. Everyone, please calm down, Jake said, raising his voice. This is my friend Ben Rodriguez. He's a marine biologist who works at a sea sanctuary. He's been swimming with sharks for 15 years. In the video, Ben was actually removing old fishing hooks from the sharks' mouths. The massive predators held perfectly still while he worked, as if they understood he was helping them. Ben says that sharks are just misunderstood, Jake continued. Most shark attacks happen because the shark mistakes a human for a seal or other prey. When they realize their mistake, they usually swim away. But why doesn't it eat him? Squeaked a small furry student. Because Ben isn't food, Jake explained. He's been working with these same sharks for years. They recognize him. They know he's not a threat, and they know he's not prey. The video showed Ben swimming alongside the sharks as if they were old friends. One large female shark actually seemed to be showing him her new baby sharks. You're telling me that your species has formed relationships with the apex predators of your world? Professor Zethara asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Well, when you put it that way, it sounds weird, Jake said. But yeah, I guess so. We've learned to understand them, and they've learned to understand us. But how is this possible? Another student asked. These creatures should see humans as either food or competition. Jake thought about it for a moment. I think it's because we don't try to dominate them. We try to work with them. We study their behavior, learn what they need, and respect their space. In return, they trust us. He showed another video, this one of his Uncle Carl. Carl was standing about 30 feet away from a massive grizzly bear and her 2 cubs. The bear was easily 800 pounds and could kill a human with one swipe of her paw. This is my Uncle Carl, Jake said. He's been studying this bear family for 3 years. He calls the mother Bertha. In the video, Carl was speaking softly to the camera while the bear foraged nearby. The cubs were playing, rolling around in the grass like giant puppies. Carl has never tried to touch Bertha or her cubs, Jake explained. He respects their space and follows their rules. But they've gotten used to him being around. They know he's not dangerous. As if to prove Jake's point, the bear in the video looked up at Carl and made a low, huffing sound. It almost sounded like a greeting. She's saying hello, Jake said. Bears are actually very intelligent. They can recognize individual humans and remember them for years. The alien students were beyond confused now. Everything they had learned about predator-prey relationships was being turned upside down. "I don't understand," said a crystalline student whose body was made of living rock. "How do you know what the bear is thinking?" "We study them," Jake said simply. "We watch how they behave, learn their body language, and figure out how they communicate. After a while, you start to understand what they're trying to tell you." "But what if you're wrong?" asked another student. "What if the bear decides to attack?" "Then Carl would use his bear spray and back away slowly," Jake said. "But that's never happened. Bertha has never shown any aggression toward him. She's more interested in finding food and taking care of her cubs." Jake showed one final video. This one was of a woman floating in the ocean, surrounded by hammerhead sharks. There were dozens of them, their strange hammer-shaped heads moving back and forth as they swam. "This is Dr. Kate Williams," Jake said. "She's a marine biologist who studies shark behavior. She's currently swimming with a school of hammerhead sharks off the coast of Costa Rica." The woman in the video was completely calm. She moved slowly and smoothly through the water, careful not to make any sudden movements. The sharks swam around her like she was part of their group. "Dr. Williams has been doing this for over 20 years, Jake explained. "She knows exactly how to behave around sharks. She understands their body language and respects their space." In the video, a massive hammerhead shark, easily 12 feet long, swam directly toward the camera. Its strange head moved from side to side as it approached. The alien students were sure they were about to watch a human being eaten dot, but the shark simply looked at Dr. Williams with its alien eyes, studied her for a moment, and then gracefully swam away. "That was a mature female," Jake said. "She was just curious about Dr. Williams. She wanted to get a closer look." "How do you know it was female?" asked Professor Zithara. "Size, behavior, and body shape," Jake said. "Dr. Williams has been studying these sharks for so long that she can tell them apart individually. She knows their personalities and their habits." The classroom was quiet now. The students were trying to process what they had just seen. It went against everything they thought they knew about life and survival. "So humans don't fight these creatures?" asked a student. "Not usually," Jake said. "We've learned that it's better to understand them than to fight them. When we understand them, we can live alongside them safely. But surely some of them are too dangerous to approach," asked another student. Jake smiled. "Wait until you meet my neighbor and his 60,000 roommates." Word about the human student and his impossible stories had spread far beyond the Galactic Academy. Students were traveling from other schools, other planets, even other star systems, just to hear Jake Morrison talk about Earth and its creatures. Professor Zithara found herself hosting the most popular lectures in the history of the Academy. The main auditorium was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Some hung from the ceiling. Others floated in the air. A few had to attend virtually because their environmental needs were too different from the others. Today, Jake had arranged something special. He had contacted friends and family back on Earth to participate in what was becoming a live documentary about human-animal relationships. The quantum communication system allowed real-time video calls across the galaxy. Today, we have several special guests joining us from Earth, Jake announced. These are humans who work directly with some of the most dangerous creatures on their planet. The first guest appeared on the massive holographic display. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She was wearing thick protective gloves and holding what looked like a thick rope. "This is Dr. Helen Torres," Jake said. "She's a herpetologist, which means she studies reptiles. Dr. Torres, can you tell us what you're holding?" The aliens quickly realized that the rope was actually alive. It was moving slowly, its muscles rippling under its skin. The creature's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "This is Samantha," Dr. Torres said calmly. "She's a Burmese python. She's about 18 feet long and weighs roughly 200 pounds. She could easily crush most of you folks, but she's actually a sweetheart." The reaction was immediate. Students screamed, fainted, and tried to run from the auditorium. Security guards had to block the exits to keep the crowd from panicking completely. "Please, everyone stay calm," Jake said. "Dr. Torres has been working with snakes for over 20 years. She knows exactly what she's doing. On the screen, Doctor." Torres was gently stroking the python's head. The massive snake seemed to enjoy the attention, pressing against her hand like a cat seeking affection. "Samantha here is a rescue," Dr. Torres explained. "Someone bought her as a baby without realizing how big she would grow. When she got too large for them to handle, they abandoned her. She's been with me for 8 years now." A brave student in the front row managed to speak. "Dr. Torres, that creature could consume you entirely." "Oh, Samantha's not hungry, Doctor," Torres said with a laugh. "She ate a rabbit last week. Pythons only need to eat about once a month. Besides, she knows I'm not food. We have a relationship built on trust and respect." To prove her point, Dr. Torres actually kissed the snake's head. The python responded by gently wrapping a coil around her arm, not to squeeze, but almost like a hug. "Samantha recognizes my scent, my voice, and my touch," Dr. Torres continued. "She knows I'm the one who feeds her, cleans her habitat, and takes care of her when she's sick. In return, she's gentle with me and seems to enjoy my company." The next guest was Jake's Uncle Carl, calling from what appeared to be a wilderness setting. Behind him, through the trees, the aliens could see movement. Large, dark shapes were moving through the forest. "Folks, I'm currently about 30 feet away from a mother grizzly bear and her 2 cubs," Carl said in a low voice. "Beautiful family. I've been watching them for 3 years now." The camera panned to show the bear family. The mother was enormous, easily 800 pounds of muscle and fur. Her claws were as long as a human hand. Her teeth could crush bone. But she was peacefully digging for roots while her cubs played nearby. "Now, I want to be very clear," Carl continued. "I am not foolish enough to approach Mama Bear. She's protecting her babies, and that makes her extremely dangerous. But we have an understanding." One of the cubs had wandered closer to Carl's position. It was about the size of a large dog, but it was still a bear cub with sharp claws and teeth. The mother bear noticed immediately. Instead of attacking, she simply made a low, huffing sound. The cub looked at her, then at Carl, and slowly walked back to its mother. "See that?" Carl said. "She's not worried about me. She knows I'm not a threat. I've been studying this family for 3 years. I call her Bertha, and she's gotten used to me being around." As if responding to her name, the bear looked directly at the camera. Her small eyes seemed intelligent and aware. She made another sound, almost like a greeting. "Bertha knows I'm here," Carl explained. "She's acknowledging me." Bears are incredibly intelligent. They can recognize individual humans and remember them for years. A student who looked like a walking flower raised a trembling leaf. "But what if you make a mistake? What if she decides you're dangerous?" "Then I would slowly back away and use my bear spray if necessary," Carl said. "But that's never happened. Bertha has never shown any aggression toward me. She's more interested in finding food and teaching her cubs how to survive." The camera showed the cubs playing together, wrestling and tumbling through the grass. They looked almost like puppies, except for their claws and the fact that they would grow up to be apex predators. "The key is understanding bear behavior," Carl continued. "I know what makes them angry, what makes them afraid, and what makes them curious. I respect their space and follow their rules. In return, they tolerate my presence. The final guest was perhaps the most shocking of all. Dr. Kate Williams appeared on screen, floating in open water. Around her, the aliens could see multiple sharks moving through the blue water. "Hi, everyone," Dr. Williams said cheerfully. "I'm currently diving with a school of hammerhead sharks off the coast of Costa Rica. There are about 40 of them around me right now." The alien students were beyond panic at this point. Several had to be carried out of the auditorium by medical teams. Others were hyperventilating into breathing apparatus. The key to working with any predator is understanding their behavior and body language, Dr. Williams explained. These hammerheads are curious about me, but they're not aggressive. See how they're swimming? Relaxed, smooth movements. If they felt threatened, their swimming would become quick and jerky. A massive hammerhead, easily 12 feet long, swam directly toward the camera. Its strange hammer-shaped head moved from side to side as it approached. The alien students were sure they were about to watch a human being eaten alive, but Dr. Williams remained perfectly calm. She didn't swim away or make any sudden movements. The shark approached slowly, studied her with its alien eyes, and then gracefully turned away. "That was a mature female," Dr. Williams said. "She's probably been around for 30 years or more. I've been diving with her for 5 years. She recognizes me now." "How is that possible?" asked Professor Zithara. "How can a shark recognize an individual human?" "Sharks are much more intelligent than most people realize," Dr. Williams explained. "They can recognize shapes, colors, and even scents. This female has learned that I'm not a threat, and I'm not food. She's curious about me, but she's not interested in eating me." Another shark approached, this one smaller and younger. It swam in a circle around Dr. Williams, studying her from different angles. "This is a juvenile male," Dr. Williams said. "He's learning from the older sharks. He's watching how they interact with me, and he's learning that I'm safe to be around." The young shark actually bumped against Dr. Williams' diving equipment, not aggressively, but almost playfully. She gently pushed it away, and it swam off to rejoin the group. "You're actually touching them?" gasped a student. "Only when necessary," Dr. Williams said. "I don't want to stress them out, but sometimes they get curious and come very close. Gentle touch usually satisfies their curiosity without causing problems." The aliens watched in amazement as dozens of sharks swam around the human without showing any signs of aggression. It was like watching a nature documentary, except the human was part of the ecosystem instead of an intruder. "Dr. Williams," Professor Zithara said, "how long have you been doing this?" "About 20 years," Dr. Williams replied. "I started when I was very young. My father was also a marine biologist, and he taught me to respect the ocean and its creatures." "Have you ever been attacked?" "Never," Dr. Williams said. "I've been bumped, investigated, and even taste-tested a few times, but never attacked. Sharks don't want to hurt humans. We're not their natural prey. Most attacks happen because of mistaken identity or because the shark feels threatened." A large shark swam directly over Dr. Williams' head, its belly almost touching her diving equipment. She remained perfectly still until it passed. "That was a pregnant female," Dr. Williams said. "She's heavy with babies. She give birth in a few weeks. I've been documenting her pregnancy for my research." The idea that a human could study a pregnant shark was so incredible that several students started crying from the stress of trying to understand it. "What we're seeing here," Professor Zithara said to her students, "is something that should be impossible. These humans are not just surviving alongside apex predators. They're forming relationships with them." "But how?" asked a student. "How is any of this possible?" Jake stepped forward. I think it's because we don't see them as monsters. We see them as individuals with their own personalities, needs, and behaviors. When you understand something, it's not as scary anymore. But surely some creatures are too dangerous to approach? Asked another student. Jake smiled. Well, let me tell you about my Nay. The stories about humans and their impossible relationships with deadly creatures had reached the highest levels of galactic government. The Galactic Science Council, which made decisions about research and exploration for thousands of worlds, had called an emergency meeting. They had assembled a team of the smartest beings in the galaxy. There were evolutionary biologists, behavioral specialists, survival experts, and xenopsychologists. All of them had one goal: to understand what they were now calling the Terran paradox. Jake found himself at the center of the biggest scientific investigation in galactic history. The main council chamber was filled with representatives from over 200 worlds. The session was being broadcast live across the galaxy. Billions of beings were watching. Let me see if I understand this correctly, said Dr. Vexthari, the council's leading expert on predator-prey relationships. She was a tall, thin creature with 6 arms and skin that changed colors when she was thinking. Your species has not only survived on what we classify as a death world, but you have formed cooperative relationships with its apex predators? That's pretty much right, Jake said. He was nervous about speaking to such an important group, but he was getting used to explaining Earth to confused aliens. But this should be impossible, Dr. Vexthari continued. Your world's weather patterns alone could destroy most civilizations. Your seismic activity is off the charts. Your atmospheric composition is toxic to 67% of known species. And your native fauna. She shuddered, her skin turning a pale blue color. I think you might be looking at this wrong, Jake said. Those aren't problems to solve. They're just part of life on Earth. We don't fight them. We adapt to them. Adapt? Asked another council member. How does one adapt to a creature that can kill you instantly? By learning to understand it, Jake said. By respecting it. By working with it instead of against it. To help explain his point, Jake had arranged for several more humans to join the session via quantum communication. These were experts who worked with some of Earth's most dangerous creatures. The first guest was Danny Park, Jake's childhood friend. Danny was calling from a ranch in Montana, where he worked with wild horses. Hey, Jake, Danny said with a wave. Everyone, I want you to meet Thunder and Lightning. Behind Danny stood 2 enormous horses. They were Mustangs, wild horses that had been born free on the plains. Thunder was black with white markings. Lightning was brown with a white stripe down his face. Both animals were massive, weighing over 1,000 pounds each. To the alien council members, these creatures looked like barely controlled monsters. Their hooves could crush bones. Their teeth could bite through metal. Their powerful legs could kick, hard enough to kill a human instantly. But Danny stood between them without any fear. He reached up and scratched Thunder behind the ears. The massive horse lowered his head and nuzzled Danny's shoulder gently. These are Mustangs, Danny explained. They're wild horses that we've trained to work with humans. Horses have been our partners for over 5,000 years. They helped us explore continents, build civilizations, and farm our land. But surely you use restraints? Asked the council member. Chains, barriers, something to control them? Nope, Danny said. These guys are here because they want to be. They could run away any time. Thunder and Lightning trust me, and I trust them. As if to prove his point, Danny climbed onto Thunder's back without using a saddle or bridle. The horse stood perfectly still, waiting for Danny's signal. When Danny gently pressed his legs against Thunder's sides, the horse began to walk smoothly across the field. Thunder here actually saved my life last year, Danny said from horseback. I was checking fence lines when a rattlesnake scared my other horse. Thunder deliberately put himself between me and the danger. He protected me even though it meant risking his own life. Lightning walked alongside them, following without being led. The horse seemed to understand that Danny was explaining something important. These animals aren't just tools, Danny continued. They're family. They have personalities, preferences, and emotions. Thunder is brave but careful. Lightning is playful but smart. They're individuals, just like people. The council members were taking notes frantically. The idea that humans could form partnerships with such large, powerful creatures was difficult to understand. The next guest was Dr. Patricia Wong, a primatologist who studied great apes. She was calling from a research station in Borneo, where she worked with orangutans. "I'm here with my research team," Dr. Wong said. "We've been studying these orangutans for over 6 years." The camera showed several large, orange-furred creatures moving through the trees around the research station. They were clearly intelligent, using tools and communicating with each other through gestures and sounds. One of the orangutans, a large male, swung down from a tree and approached Dr. Wong. The alien council members were sure they were about to watch a human being attacked. Orangutans were incredibly strong, much stronger than humans. They could easily tear a person apart, but the orangutan simply sat down next to Dr. Wong and gently touched her hand with his finger. "This is Oliver," Dr. Wong said. "He's been part of our study since he was young." Orangutans are incredibly intelligent and emotional creatures. They have complex social relationships. They use tools, and they can even learn sign language. Oliver made a series of hand gestures, and Dr. Wong nodded in understanding. "He's asking if I brought any fruit today," she translated. "Sorry, Oliver. Not today." The orangutan seemed to understand. He made a sound that almost sounded like disappointment and started to climb back up his tree. "Oliver isn't just a research subject," Dr. Wong explained. "He's an individual with his own thoughts, feelings, and personality. He remembers things, he has preferences, and he forms relationships with both humans and other orangutans." "But how do you know he won't hurt you?" asked a council member. "Because I've spent years learning to understand him," Dr. Wong said. "I know his body language, his moods, and his needs. He knows that I'm not a threat and that I respect his space. We have a relationship based on mutual trust." Oliver had returned with a small branch which he offered to Dr. Wong. She accepted it gratefully, and the orangutan made a happy sound. "He's giving me a gift," Dr. Wong said. "This is how orangutans show affection and friendship. Oliver considers me part of his social group." The final guest was the most shocking of all. Mr. Frank Davis appeared on screen, standing in his backyard, surrounded by wooden boxes. The air around him was thick with thousands of flying insects. "Folks, I'm currently surrounded by about 60,000 bees," Mr. Davis said calmly. "These are my girls, and they're having a wonderful day." The alien council members saw only a swarm of armed insects. Each bee carried a venomous stinger. Together, they could kill any creature on most worlds. But Mr. Davis seemed completely relaxed as hundreds of bees crawled over his arms, shoulders, and face. "Bees are amazing creatures," Mr. Davis continued. "They're highly organized, incredibly efficient, and absolutely essential to Earth's ecosystem. Without bees, about 1/3 of our food supply would disappear." A bee landed on Mr. Davis' nose, and he chuckled. "Hey there, beautiful. How's the hive today? You're actually communicating with them?" asked Dr. Vexthari in amazement. "In a way, yes," Mr. Davis said. "Bees communicate through dance, pheromones, and vibrations. After 20 years of beekeeping, you learn to read their signals. These girls are happy today. They found a new patch of wildflowers this morning. Mr. Davis reached into one of the wooden boxes and pulled out a frame covered with bees. The insects continued to work, building their honeycomb and caring for their young, completely ignoring the giant human who was holding their home. Each hive is like a single organism made up of thousands of individuals, Mr. Davis explained. They work together to survive, just like humans do. The difference is that we've learned to work together with them. But what if they decide to attack? Asked a council member. They won't, Mr. Davis said confidently. Bees only attack when they feel threatened. I move slowly. I don't make sudden noises, and I respect their space. In return, they tolerate my presence and allow me to help them. He gently placed the frame back in the hive. The bees continued their work as if nothing had happened. The key is understanding that we're all part of the same ecosystem, Mr. Davis said. Bees need flowers to survive. Flowers need bees to reproduce. Humans need both of them for food. We're all connected. Dr. Vexthari stood up from her seat. Her skin had turned a deep purple color, which meant she was thinking very hard. What we're seeing here defies everything we know about evolution and survival, she said. According to our understanding, species compete for resources. They fight for territory. They eat each other. They don't cooperate. But maybe that's the problem, Jake said. Maybe you're only looking at half the picture. Yes, species compete sometimes. But they also cooperate. They form partnerships. They help each other survive. Give us an example, Dr. Vexthari said. Well, there are cleaner fish that eat parasites off bigger fish, Jake said. The big fish could eat the little fish, but they don't because the little fish are helping them. There are birds that warn buffalo about predators. The buffalo could step on the birds, but they don't because the birds are useful. Those are symbiotic relationships, Dr. Vexthari said. There. The final session of what everyone now called the Terran Revelations was the most important meeting in galactic history. Representatives from every major civilization had gathered to hear the conclusions of the investigation. The findings were about to change how the galaxy understood life itself. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the vast council chamber. Around him sat thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. He was no longer the nervous exchange student who had accidentally started this whole thing. He was now recognized as an ambassador for humanity and a teacher for the galaxy. Professor Zithara stood beside him, holding a data pad with months of research. Her 3 eyes were bright with excitement. After extensive study, Professor Zithara began, we have reached several important conclusions about humanity and their relationship with their homeworld. The chamber was completely silent. Every being was listening carefully. First, what we classified as a death world is not actually a world of death, she continued. It is a world of incredible diversity that promotes adaptation and cooperation. She gestured to a massive holographic display that showed Earth in all its complexity. Forests, oceans, deserts, and mountains. Storms, earthquakes, and volcanoes. But also life, everywhere life could possibly exist. Second, humans did not survive their environment by conquering it. They survived by learning to work with it. They formed partnerships with creatures that could have been their enemies. The display showed images from all their previous sessions. Humans swimming with sharks, working with horses, caring for snakes, and living alongside bears. Third, and most importantly, this is not unique to humans. We have discovered that many species throughout the galaxy form these cooperative relationships. We simply never looked for them before. A tall crystalline being raised one of its arms. Professor, are you saying that cooperation is more important than competition? I'm saying that both are important, Professor Zithara replied. Competition drives evolution and improvement, but cooperation allows species to survive challenges. That would destroy them individually. Jake stepped forward. We found examples of this everywhere once we started looking. Would you like to see? The display changed to show footage from across the galaxy. On Altair Prime, tall humanoid beings worked alongside wolf-like creatures to hunt and protect their settlements. On Vega 7, insect-like farmers partnered with flying pollinators to grow their crops. Even on crystalline worlds, different types of rock-based life forms helped each other grow and spread. The difference, Jake explained, is that Earth's challenging environment made these partnerships essential for survival. What you thought was impossible was just everyday life for us. A small, furry delegate from the Outer Rim stood up. But what about the emotional bonds? Why do you form friendships with creatures that don't provide direct benefits? Jake smiled. But they do provide benefits, just not the kind you might expect. He activated a new section of the display. It showed humans playing with dogs, cuddling with cats, and simply sitting peacefully with various animals. These relationships provide emotional support, companionship, and mental health benefits, Jake explained. Humans who live with animals are happier, healthier, and live longer lives. The animals seem to benefit too. They're safer, better fed, and receive medical care. Dr. Vexthari, who had been quiet throughout the session, finally spoke. Our research has led us to a startling conclusion. Humans are not an anomaly. They represent what happens when evolution prioritizes cooperation over pure competition. Your species has shown us that true strength comes not from defeating your environment, but from understanding it, Professor Zithara added. You've proven that the most dangerous predators can become the most loyal allies. A young delegate from the Helix cluster raised a tentacle. What does this mean for the rest of us? Jake looked around the chamber at the hundreds of different species. Each one had evolved on a different world, faced different challenges, and developed different solutions. It means that maybe we've all been thinking about survival wrong, Jake said. Instead of asking, how do we protect ourselves from the dangers of the universe? Maybe we should be asking, how do we learn to live with those dangers? On Earth, we have a saying, Jake continued. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. But I think the real lesson is that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make a friend instead. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates began talking among themselves. Some were excited by the possibilities. Others were worried about the implications. All of them were trying to understand what this meant for their own worlds. A delegate from the Spiral Arm Coalition stood up. Mr. Morrison, would humans be willing to teach us these methods? Would you help us learn to work with the dangerous creatures on our worlds? Of course, Jake said. But I think you'll find that you already know how to do this. You just need to start looking at the creatures around you differently. More delegates began standing up, asking questions and making requests. They wanted to establish exchange programs with Earth. They wanted human consultants to visit their worlds. They wanted to learn everything they could about cooperation and partnership. Professor Zithara watched the proceedings with satisfaction. You know, Jake, when you first arrived at the academy, I thought you were the most dangerous student in my classroom. What changed your mind? Jake asked. I realized you weren't dangerous at all, she said. You were just different. And maybe that difference is exactly what the galaxy needs. As the session continued, delegates began sharing their own stories. A representative from the water worlds talked about intelligent sea creatures that helped their people navigate the oceans. A desert dweller described partnerships with creatures that could find water in the driest places. Even the machine intelligences had formed relationships with organic beings that helped them understand emotions and creativity. What we're seeing, Dr. Vexthari announced, is that cooperation is not just a human trait. It's a universal principle of life. Species that learn to work together are more likely to survive and thrive. But humans have taken this principle further than anyone else, Professor Zithara added. They've shown us that cooperation doesn't have to be based on pure survival needs. It can be based on friendship, trust, and mutual respect. Jake nodded. The creatures we call pets aren't really pets at all. They're family members. They're partners. They're friends who happen to be different species. A delegate from the far reaches asked, "How do we know which creatures are safe to approach?" "You start small," Jake said. "You observe. You learn. You respect their space and their needs. Most importantly, you remember that they're individuals with their own personalities and preferences." "And if you make a mistake?" asked another delegate. "Then you learn from it," Jake said. "Every relationship has challenges. The key is to keep trying, keep learning, and keep respecting each other." The session was drawing to a close, but the real work was just beginning. Delegates were already making plans to return to their worlds and start looking for partnership opportunities. Some were organizing expeditions to Earth to learn from human experts. Others were planning to invite humans to visit their worlds as consultants and teachers. "This is just the beginning," Professor Zithara announced. "Today, we've learned that the universe is not a hostile place where species must fight for survival. It's a community where different forms of life can work together to create something better than any of them could achieve alone." Jake looked around the chamber one last time. Just a few months ago, he had been a scared college student trying to hide in the back of a classroom. Now he was standing at the center of a galactic revolution in thinking. "I have one last thing to show you," Jake said. "This is a message from my sister Lisa." The display showed Lisa Morrison floating in the ocean next to Bruce, the great white shark they had seen in the very first session. But now Bruce wasn't alone. He was swimming with a female shark and several smaller sharks. "Hi, everyone," Lisa said with a big smile. "I wanted to show you that Bruce found a mate and started a family. These are his babies." The baby sharks were swimming around their parents, learning to hunt and explore their environment. They showed no fear of Lisa, treating her as just another part of their world. "Bruce is getting ready to return to the open ocean with his family," Lisa continued. "But he'll always be welcome here if he needs help. That's what friends do for each other." The young shark swam curiously around Lisa, bumping against her diving equipment and investigating this strange creature who had helped their father. "You see," Jake said to the assembled delegates, "it's not about controlling these creatures or using them for our own purposes. It's about being part of their world and letting them be part of ours. It's about understanding that we're all connected." He continued, "Whether we're humans, aliens, sharks, or bees, we're all just trying to survive and take care of our families in this big, complicated universe." As the session ended, delegates began approaching Jake with final questions and requests. They wanted to know more about everything they had seen. They wanted to understand how they could apply these lessons to their own worlds. Professor Zithara stood watching the crowd around Jake. Her student had become a